this card's still playable. I think if you're taking out any brain in a jar, you need to consider shaving at least some number of Becks or both of them because the card just does not work properly without the brain nearly as easily. Otherwise, you're just casting the call side, and that never feels good. Yeah, it's just transformational sideboard potential. Yeah, something to think about. I do like the two ofs though. I think it's just much more consistent and just has felt better in the testing that I did do. But anyway. But would Faraway be a useful tutor target? It's not bad, Tree. The problem with the Faraway in Blue-White-Red is that you aren't going to be casting the black spells. Like, Surgical's not here with any black mana. Same can be said about the Beck Call. Like, the deck isn't designed to naturally fuse this. The same would be said about a Faraway. We have considered it, though, in the list, the team and I. I don't think it's necessary. It's very cool tech. It works better in, like, an Esper-colored Brain deck, probably. Here, I don't really want to run, like, a crummy bounce spell that's never going to be in a way unless I have the Brain active. I'd much rather be running the odds. Let's go ahead and test an extra odds ends. It seems fine. I've tested as many as 2. It's really powerful. Technically more main deckable, by the way, than the Sudden Shock if you really want to go that deep. Not that it's deep, I mean, like, there's plenty of Infect, so there's plenty of reason to have a sideboard. Sudden Shock, if you're looking to go into Blue-White-Red, I highly recommend it. I just recommend, like, don't necessarily have... Something that I'm guilty of building sideboards for is trying to have answers for everything, when it's better just to have the right answers for the decks that beat you the most post-board. So, yeah, I mean, being able to sideboard in such a way that gives the deck better Haymaker potential, and... I mean, if anything, I would just do this even. Like, we've run heavy on Helix before. I would even just do that. Because, like, the odds in the end is sweet, but it's more specialized than the Boom Bust is or the Beck Call is, so maybe a 1-1 split makes more sense. You can bring it in when you just desperately need that Edict effect, or that you just need more... Like here's the thing about odds, is that it's for specific counter wars or specific spells. An example of a spell that it's fine to odds is Ad Nauseam. It doesn't matter what you get on the coin flip against Ad Nauseam if you have other mana open, because the odds are in your... Jeez. The chances are that you are going to... If you odds an Ad Nauseam, you resolve your Ad Nauseam first, or it gets countered. Both outcomes are fine, because... likely you have basically your entire life pool against the Ad Nauseam deck, and then you get to just draw a whole bunch of cards, and you hit likely another counter spell. So you're good to go. And then you just stop what they were trying to do. Yeah. Just beat the most played decks, or beat the decks that are going to be most played that do a good job beating you. But anyways, I would still even do that, by the way. I would still do that. Just because I think Sudden Shock is totally fine. I mean, a lot of people reserve that it's not something that these decks want to look into. I don't necessarily feel the same way. Like, I'm happy to test cards that are potentially questionable, because I think that that's where you can tap into to that potential. You can tap into things that other players aren't thinking about doing. Anyway. Yeah, exactly. Some decks you can just accept defeat. This deck's basically saying, okay, Tron, that's fine. Like, you could take up a sizable portion of the sideboard running more stuff. I think between 2 quarters, 2 booms, the booms are tutorable. We could, like, boom or quarter a Tron player and then surgical post-board. Like, you just surgical the Tron land is fine. And we could go heavier on surgicals if I want to do that. Plan, like, I could run as many as 2 surgical. The card's just so much more flexible than the now that's under the pretense that what this is under, like, using these instead of the sewing, or not the sewing, the good lord, we were gonna run maybe some well, hang on. I think it's so much more flexible because you can use it in other matchups. And thank you, Crumble. Yeah, using those instead of the crumbles is just a much more flexible slot. Now that's however you're saying you need to what? You're saying you need to pair this with this. It's not hard for me to pair the boom bust with the surgical thanks to the tutor potential of Muddle. But yeah, I mean naturally, okay, I'll admit naturally drawing a ghost quarter and then also having the surgical, that's a bit of a pipe dream, but it could come up. That's why I was only thinking to run one surgical because it's a bit of a pipe dream that you get to do that. So you're better just relying on the tutorable land destruction. Yeah, Crumble. Shadow's super spicy, but there's so many matchups that it's just a really poor think twice impression, and our mana's not like beautiful for blue, which has me worried about the muddle and the cryptic, honestly. But we can jam this. This will be fun. So let me rename this. This will be, let's just call it Bird Brain Ancestral Transfusion. And this was just something that I possibly could have played, but probably won't because, I mean, Blue-Red's under the radar, or not under the radar, under the microscope. A lot of players, I'm sure, are tailoring their deck to play against it. We'll see how it does, though, just for funs. You know, if it does well tonight, is that going to make me change my feeling about it? Not really. Deflecting Palm is... I think you're better off with something that's not dispellable. Oh man. Green screen, why? Why so green? It's a little better, but now I'm fuzzy. Whatever. Let me say this, gentlemen, ladies and gents. At least because it's got that split second, you're able to tutor it up. Like the sudden shock instead of something like, will Kolaghan's command be our natural enemy? Yeah. I think so. How much Kolaghan's are we going to see? I assume there are going to be some Grixis decks. I assume there are going to be some Jund running main deck Colas. Outside of that, here's the thing though, run home. Jund is already a natural enemy whether or not the Jeskai players want to admit. It's pretty decent against us game one. Unless you get lucky and you stick the Nahiri and you're able to protect it, which is not always the case. Post board, the matchup gets a lot easier, and what's nice about me against the Jund player is, you know, not that I'm going to play this at the GP, but you get to pump fake them. Like, they leave in a lot of that artifact destruction, maybe even bring in some more, because if they saw you doing things like instant speed get in or instant speed draw 4 cards, make 4 1/1s, you bet your Tarmogoyf if they're going to bring in a way to fight these cards, and it's a very minor portion of the deck. So you just take this out, and then you bring this in against Jund, and you take these out too. And then, of course, there's some other sideboarding that happens. I'm not going to delve into here, like you take out the image, unless you think they're on Spellskites. You bring in the other Anger if they're on a Kitchen Finks heavy build. Like, there's a lot of like other little pieces that move in and out, but in the matchup. But I will say that for the most part, like the transformational sideboard, just for whatever reason, I don't know what it is about Jund players. I've played many very intelligent and very fantastic Jund players. This is not a knock to Jund, but most of the time, I notice that they tend to overboard for something that they haven't seen before. I don't know why that is. That's just something I've noticed. So giving them the ability to overboard for something is great. And if they catch on to you that you're transformational sideboard, you just board the brains back in, and then you get to punish them for taking out. Now, they may still easily be running the Colas, so you got to watch out for that. But them taking out the Abrupt Decays makes brain potentially really good again. So, yeah, you can do that. Like, you know, like, just stay on your toes. Like, if you're a transformational sideboard, and, you know, like some players will even just like say to you, like when you play in paper, like they may, like I've had some players when I test this in paper just say to me, oh wait, you boarded the brains out? And like, don't lie to them. I don't think you get ahead in Magic by lying. Like, say, yeah, I boarded it out. You don't have to answer their question, but yeah, just say like, yeah, I boarded it out. Use that to your advantage. Now that you've admitted honestly to your opponent that you did board the brains out, board them back in. Because that's your Jund player basically telling you, oh, I'm taking out all my removal for brain. Great, I'll put it back in. Let's go game 3. And then like if they're gonna fight over, like I think you still run this plan too against Jund, but like yeah, like your opponent asking you that question as a transformational sideboard is basically them honestly asking you, should I take out my Abrupt Decays? And the answer, like when I'm honestly answering the player and they ask me that question, they're saying, oh, like, you know, oh man, you took out the brains. I get, you know, like that's them basically admitting to me that they're like, crap, I left in all my Abrupt Decays. So that's good. And then you can kind of next level to the next level. And, you know, there's a lot you can do with a transformational sideboard that the Jeskai deck that people will be taking to the GP if it's just based off the Peter Ingram deck that Jim Davis's team brought. They don't have that. They don't have the ability, like, they're basically just a glorified burn deck, right? I'm not saying it's a bad deck. It's a fantastic deck. It's a great choice to bring to the GP if you're going to play it. Please, by all means, play it. I think it's a really awesome deck. But realize that you're on the radar. People know what you're up to. So only having 2 plans of either, like, Bolt/Beats or specifically Nahiri Emrakul, people are going to be ready for you. And just be aware. Just be aware. Just because people are ready for you doesn't mean the deck isn't good. And it doesn't mean that they can stop what your deck is doing. But Jund is going to be packing more pulses. And unfortunately, Maelstrom Pulse answers both Brain and Nahiri. So, we'll see. You want me to talk about this list? Oh, I'm not taking this list to the GP. Ankylosaur. I think Surgical is still such a great sideboard card. People bring it in more way often. I would only bring in Surgical against Snapcaster Mage. I would bring it in against, like, if I want to be... If there's, like, a land that, like, against Tron, we could bring it in because we have, like, tutorable land destruction. Yeah. I mean, I was really excited to maybe bring this to the GP. I'm a little disappointed. I'm excited to see the archetype do well, like the whole Nahiri Jeskai thing. And I actually had already incorporated this into my as my sideboard plan before Pete actually won the tournament. I was already doing it in the sideboard, but I think the fact that now it's all over everybody's radar, I think I'm less inclined to do it. So, but yeah. No, you can't get flooded by Brain. The beauty of Brain is, like, additional brains are fine. That was what we found early on, or not early on in testing, but I tried to force the Thopter Foundry for so long. The problem with the Thopter Foundries is it doesn't really do anything in multiples. I mean, you can, like, make a Thopter gain a life. That's not strong enough in Modern. You have to have both pieces before it's strong. Brain's not the case. Brain is actually plenty strong even before you see a Beck Call or a Boom Bust or an Odds and Ends, or, like, you can 1-mana Cryptic. Brain is already strong. It gives you something to be doing with your mana, and that's something that the Jeskai deck craves. It's why the deck also runs Lighthouse. Even versions that won't look into Brain in a Jar. A lot of people think that the only busted card that Jeskai got out of the Innistrad block, the new Innistrad block, excuse me, Shadows over Innistrad, was Nahiri. I think they're wrong. I think that, I think they're right that Nahiri is the strongest card that came out of Shadows by far, but people don't really think about Brain. Like, this deck is, like, mostly spells. If you have a deck that's mostly okay, if you have a creature deck that's mostly creatures, it could maybe be an Either Vile deck. If you have a deck that's mostly spells, wouldn't a natural fit be something like, I don't know, preaching to the choir at this point. Why not just more Surgical, Suspend? Yeah, it could just be like another Surgical, instead of, I guess, the 3rd Helix or the 2nd Odds and Ends. Yeah, you could run more Surgical. I can't test it on Magic Online, though. But I think we were considering 2 Surgicals. Because there are plenty of matches you can use it in. If we're expecting a lot of other Snapcaster Mage decks, it's great. It's good against Crucial Brand, other Degenerate combo. Yeah, you can bring this in a lot of matchups and gives you a lot of information post-board. Just, you need to use it properly. It's not the kind of card that you should just throw into a sideboard and you don't necessarily have, like... You need to make sure you know what you're, like, aiming this at. I'm aiming this at Urza lands after a Ghost Quarter or a Boom Bust. I'm aiming this at, you know, Degenerate Graveyard decks, or maybe the Dredge deck it'd be fine against. If you can grab the Prized Amalgams, actually the deck does a lot less. If they're on the Vengevine build, if you Surgical the Vengevines, the deck does a lot less. The Vengevine's really scary because of the haste, so you could do that. Both would be fine in this meta. There's a lot of Snapcasters, there's a lot of Tron, there's a lot of... you know, Degenerate combo, there's going to be a lot of Dredge, so yeah, 2nd Surgical makes a lot of sense. Or you could run, like, Rest in Peace, you know? Unicorn says, I love your love for brains. Ike says, I don't believe here that you're preaching to the choir. Oh, true. But Ankylosaur didn't say anything else, so I'm assuming either I answered your question, or you left, or something. What's going on, friend?